They are Europe's ultimate mystery, the Basques, a people whose ancient language has no known relatives anywhere on Earth, a population that emerged from prehistory carrying genetic patterns unlike any other group on the continent. For centuries, the Basques have baffled scientists, historians, and linguists alike, with their distinctive blood profiles, their impossible tongue, and their stubborn refusal to be absorbed by the empires and migrations that reshaped everyone around them. But groundbreaking DNA analysis has finally revealed the astonishing truth about who the Basques really are. It rewrites everything. Deep in the Pyrenees Mountains, straddling the border between Spain and France, lives a people who speak the impossible. Euskera, the Basque language, is a linguistic orphan, completely and utterly unrelated to Spanish, French, or any other language on Earth. While every other European tongue traces its roots back to the great Indo-European family tree, Euskera stands entirely alone. No parent language, no sister languages, nothing. This isn't just unusual, it's archaeologically stunning. Euskera is the only surviving pre-Indo-European language in all of Western Europe. A living fossil that somehow endured wave after wave of invasion and conquest, events that erased every other trace of Europe's original languages without leaving so much as a whisper behind. Consider the forces it survived. When Celtic warriors swept across Europe around 500 BC, the Basques kept speaking their ancient tongue. When Roman legions conquered virtually the entire continent, the Basques kept speaking their ancient tongue. When Germanic tribes carved up the Western Empire, and when Arabic-speaking Moorish armies ruled the Iberian Peninsula for 8 full centuries, through all of it, the Basques kept speaking their ancient tongue, virtually unchanged. The language itself holds remarkable secrets. Euskera has no word that clearly derives from Latin, despite centuries of Roman presence nearby. Its counting system is based on 20s rather than 10s, suggesting mathematical thinking that developed in complete isolation, and it contains what appear to be extraordinarily ancient words. Heights for rock, for water, su for fire. Vocabulary linguists believe may represent some of humanity's earliest spoken language, preserved like insects in amber while the world transformed around it. When Romans first encountered the Basques 2,000 years ago, they recorded with evident frustration that the language was so utterly alien that Latin chroniclers couldn't even begin to parse its structure. For an empire accustomed to stamping out local identity and replacing it with Latin culture, the Basques presented a problem they'd never quite solved. But the linguistic mystery was only the beginning. When scientists began studying Basque blood, they discovered something that challenged everything we understood about human migration in Europe. In the 1940s, medical researchers found that the Basques had the highest concentration of Rh-negative blood of any population in the world, around 47% in some communities, compared to roughly 15% across the rest of Europe. They also showed over 50% type O blood, creating a genetic fingerprint unlike anything observed elsewhere. This wasn't merely medically interesting, it was historically explosive. Rh-negative blood is ancient, inherited from humanity's earliest ancestors, and its distribution can reveal the movement of peoples across vast stretches of time. Most populations that migrate and intermix gradually lose their Rh-negative frequency over generations. The fact that the Basques had retained such extraordinarily high levels suggested they were direct descendants of Europe's original inhabitants, people who had lived in remarkable isolation for an almost incomprehensible length of time. But those early blood studies raised more questions than they answered. Were the Basques truly the last survivors of Europe's ancient world? Or migrants from some mysterious, distant land who had simply become isolated over time? Then came the age of DNA, and everything changed. In 2021, an international team led by Dr. David Comas at the University of Barcelona conducted the most comprehensive genetic analysis of Basque populations ever attempted. Using over 600,000 genetic markers across the entire genome, they analyzed DNA from 200 Basque individuals whose 4 grandparents were all born in the same microgeographical areas, then compared this against nearly 2,000 individuals from across Europe and the Mediterranean. The results were revolutionary. The genetic data revealed that Basque uniqueness was not the product of exotic migration from a distant land. It was the result of extraordinary, almost unbroken continuity, stretching back over 2,500 years to the Iron Age. The Basques had experienced virtually no gene flow from the massive waves of peoples that transformed the rest of Europe. While their Spanish neighbors showed clear genetic contributions from Romans, Visigoths, Moors, and numerous other groups, the Basques remained genetically stable across millennia, like a genetic island in a vast ocean of human movement and mixing. To appreciate how extraordinary this is, the average Spaniard today carries DNA from at least 6 major ancestral groups. But when researchers compared genetic profiles from Iron Age Basque burials against modern Basque populations, they found something never documented anywhere else in Europe. The profiles were virtually indistinguishable. Most European populations showed dramatic genetic shifts over just a few centuries. The Basques had maintained genetic stability across entire millennia. Dr. Comas described the findings as unlike anything his team had encountered in European research. The Basques weren't just genetically distinct, they had maintained that distinctiveness while being completely surrounded by 2,000 years of intense genetic mixing. But the study revealed something even more remarkable, something that completely reframed how scientists understood the relationship between language and human biology. Euskera itself had acted as an impermeable genetic barrier. The research demonstrated that the Basque language had functioned as a cultural fortress, protecting genetic identity in ways that mountains and valleys alone never could. The evidence was startling. Areas where Euskera had always been spoken showed the strongest genetic isolation. Regions where the language had been historically present but later lost showed intermediate genetic patterns. And territories where Euskera had never been spoken showed far greater mixing with surrounding populations. Even more remarkable, different Basque dialects correlated with distinct genetic subdivisions within the population itself. Researchers could literally predict which dialect someone spoke based on their DNA alone. In some cases, they identified measurable genetic differences between communities separated by just 15 kilometers. Marriage records from the 16th century confirmed it. Over 90% of Basques married someone who spoke not just the same language, but the same specific regional dialect. The cultural power of language had been quietly shaping Basque genetics for centuries, generation after generation, without anyone realizing what was happening. The genetic analysis also solved one of Europe's greatest archaeological puzzles. Ancient DNA from early farmer burials in northern Spain confirmed that the Basques descended from Europe's earliest agricultural populations, but with one crucial distinction. While farming peoples across the rest of Europe were genetically transformed by successive waves of migration, the Basques remained largely untouched. They became living representatives of what Europeans looked like before the great population movements that reshaped the continent. When you look at a Basque person today, you are not merely seeing someone with an unusual genetic profile. You may be looking at what your own ancestors resembled before thousands of years of migration and mixing permanently altered the European gene pool. The Basques had become an accidental time capsule, preserving not just their language, but the genetic signatures of Europe's deep prehistoric past. This isolation was reinforced by cultural practices that appear nowhere else in Europe. The Basque inheritance system concentrated property within family lines through indivisible inheritance, the entire farm passing to one heir regardless of gender, naturally preventing dilution through outside marriages. Basque women enjoyed property rights and freedoms unheard of in medieval Europe, meaning they typically married within their own communities by choice rather than political necessity. Even traditional Basque sports like pelota, with rules that varied village by village, created tight social networks that rarely extended beyond Euskera-speaking communities. And Basque mythology, featuring ancient earth goddesses and creation stories found nowhere else in European culture, suggests cultural memories stretching back to Europe's pre-Indo-European past, preserved intact alongside their genetic heritage. In the Sole region of southern France, genetic analysis has identified family lineages remaining in the same valleys for over 40 consecutive generations. Church records from the 14th century list family names that still exist in the same villages today. Unbroken continuity across 7 centuries of European upheaval, wars, plagues, revolutions, industrialization, none of it moved the Basques or meaningfully diluted what made them distinct. The latest evidence has finally solved Europe's most enduring puzzle. The Basques are not mysterious migrants from a distant land. They are the indigenous people of their region, a population that maintained its identity across millennia through an almost accidental combination of geography, culture, language, and collective will. The mystery of the Basques has finally been solved, but their story, ancient, unbroken, and extraordinary, continues. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do like this video and subscribe for more videos like this.